Gwyneth, did you choose to be a singer, or did it just happen to you? At some point, you made a choice. A big choice that said, I'm going to give that kind of energy, dedication, commitment, which meant you weren't going to do other things. My wonderful colleague, Marilyn, she practices every day. You could be doing other things. You're making choices that reinforce lifestyles. That's what it means to live deliberately. It's not fancy, it's just hard. What can we say to people who think liberal religion is just an excuse to believe whatever you want and use it to justify a sinful life? And my instant answer is, why do you think they're different from us? Think about it. Do they end up sinning less than you do? Think about it. We are told that it is easier for a camel to thread a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. Anyone remember who that comes from? That's the J guy we heard earlier, Mr. Jesus. Now, I walk to church every week. I go by several churches along the way, and some of those churches have cars parked outside. Present company accepted. I see some pretty fancy cars. I saw a Jaguar this morning outside a church, clearly belonging to a worshiper who clearly is trying to thread that car through that needle every Sunday. Who's sinning whom? So I want to say that when someone asks you that question, my friend, consider the source. Piety almost always is a good cover for one's own sins. None of us have 20/20 moral vision, including Christians. Even John Calvin, famous John Calvin, said we need the Bible to be like glasses to clear our vision. My problem is I don't think we all need the same prescription. Pride lurks in every question like that. They want you to tell them, yeah, I'm a sinner and you're not. But I remember that same Jesus guy, gee whiz, he has so many good things to say, who said, they have their reward. Using a familiar metaphor, I tell people when they're faced with this issue to say, I've heard it said that when you arrive at heaven's gate, you are judged not by the number of medals you wear, but by the number of scars you carry. That's the measure of your piety. How do you practice resurrection? Well, you don't have to die, but you do have to kind of sort of die. You really kind of sort of do. Every time we relinquish what we want for someone else's sake, it is a form of death and resurrection. How many parents have been awakened at 4 a.m. on Christmas morning? You had two choices, murder or suicide. You chose suicide, didn't you? You gave up your agenda, your night's sleep, because chances are you didn't get to bed much before 2. That's a gentle form of resurrection. Whenever you give yourself over to the well-being of another, a child, a spouse, your family, your country, you are practicing resurrection because you're relinquishing your need to be alive on your terms to something you treasure even more. Every week, the person up there reads the same text. I always tell them, you don't have to read that. You can write anything you want, and sometimes they do. But one of those phrases comes from William James. The secret to a meaningful life is to spend it on something larger than your own. I dissent from the bumper sticker that said, he who dies with the most toys wins. He who dies with the most toys dies. That's it. And someone else has to sell the toys. You lose. The way to win is to die broke, having given everything, not your money, toward that which you know matters, your children, your neighborhood, your faith, your country. That's what I mean by practicing resurrection, because I think we don't look for eternal life. When I imagine eternal life, I find that terrifying, because the choices seem to be pretty boring, either playing harps all day, forever, or being with my family forever. Be honest now. What I want is not to be eternally conscious. I want my life to be eternally precious. We all want to know that our lives mattered. And that's what we come looking for. Some assurance, some hope, some possibility that our lives aren't just from here to here and from there to there, that they add to the universe. And I believe they do. I hope I say that. Sometimes I should say it more often. Desmond Tutu says that liberation requires responsibility. What are the responsibilities of freedom? There are 3 of them, as far as I can discern, but I only did this in the last 2 days, so I could be really wrong. Integrity. Live the truth you know. Those who live a lie deny the truth that they know. Remember my Jaguar driving friend going into church? That's living a lie. Living a lie is when you know something is so and you live contrary to that. And that means you're corrupting your own integrity. If you use your freedom to avoid the truth, you're not really free, are you? You're enslaved. You're enslaved to a fear, a doubt, a dread. So you're not free. So integrity is essential. To be free is to be faithful to oneself. And that leads to the second responsibility, which is dignity, which is a lot like integrity. But instead of having faith in oneself, it means I have as much faith in you as I have in me. So I will treat you with the respect that I give myself. And to the extent that I do not treat you with respect, to the extent that I do not salute your humanity and only my own, I have not just taken your dignity, I've taken mine. So if I think I have integrity, I have to offer it to you, treat you as though you have it, and expect it from you as I would from myself, because we are mutually accountable for our integrity. And the last one, and it's a key part of that, is honesty. That doesn't mean saying everything that's on your mind. Lord knows that we should keep some thoughts to ourselves. But what I do mean is being accountable for your actions. It is accepting responsibility for mistakes and taking action to repair them. Everyone makes mistakes. I make more mistakes than most. It's one of my gifts. And I like to do them as often as I possibly can. Because that's what freedom means. When you are free, you don't know the answer to everything. You're trying. You're going to mess up. One of my teachers as a clergyman said that the motto he would like to have of his church is, this church is where it's okay to fail. Because he understood that if you're afraid of failure, you will not take risks. I always point at Gwyneth because she used to be on stage. You've got to take a risk to reach those notes, right? Periodically, they're not there. If you ever doubted you could get there, you'd stop singing altogether. You take risks all the time. I don't play the piano in public because I make lots of mistakes, but next week I'm going to do it anyway. Worse, Gwyneth, I'm going to sing next week. Oh, it's going to be awful. But I'm taking a risk to convey a message. I want you to know that making mistakes is important. You have to make them. You have to make lots of them, and then you have to repair the mistakes. Because freedom requires mistakes. You can't have a free world and not have mistakes. But if you don't repair the mistakes, things fall apart. So make mistakes. Make lots of them. Then say, oops, my bad. How can I make it right? And that's when you did the integrity thing right back at you. I made a mistake. Honor says I need to take responsibility. And you go to the person you've hurt and say, how can we make it right? And at that point, it's on them to say, here's how.